Welcome to the Real and Real Estate Podcast, your go-to show for real estate success. Whether you're an agent aiming to crush it or a buyer or seller wanting the inside scoop, we're here to deliver expert advice, insider tips, and the real talk you need. Each episode, we chat with top industry pros to give you the facts, strategies, and inspiration you need to thrive in this business. Let's dive in and make big moves together. Hi, welcome back to the Real and Real Estate, where we talk to the experts, get the facts, and dispel the myths. And we are very fortunate today to have Bronson Hill with us of Bronson Equity, and he's going to talk to us about unique investments. He has quite a background that I will let you hear about, but basically he started out in sales in the medical device world and moved into renting homes, and now he is all kinds of equity issues that he works with, and he helps people do multifamily investing, and that's what he's going to talk to us about today. So welcome, Bronson.
Thanks, Gene. Really excited to be with you today.
Thank you. Well, I gave a little bit, but how did you get into this? Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was a well-paid professional. I was medical sales device, was making over $200,000 a year. And I worked with a couple of physicians actually that were making millions a year, but they were working 60 or 80 hours a week. And I just realized for me and a lot of people that are professionals, particularly in the medical field, there's just no time. Everybody was super busy and there wasn't the ability to, as Warren Buffett would say, make money while you sleep, right? It was still a time for money trade. And this is something I find for a lot of professionals is that even though we're making a lot of money per hour, we still have to go in and do it versus actually having the asset or something. The money actually, it makes money for itself, right? So I think that's really where you get next level with real estate is you actually learn how to make money while you sleep. So I started to kind of research this, look into it, started buying houses, realized I was kind of creating another job for myself, having rental houses, even with a property manager. I was still having to go find properties and dealing with tenants and all that stuff. And so then I learned about multifamily syndication, started raising money for some larger deals, started investing as well. And now about 6 years later, we've raised about $45 million. We're doing things that provide cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, and actually a lot of business related, oil and gas. We bought a private business as well recently, and so. But I think it's really I love real estate, but I really love what real estate and I love what businesses. I love what these things do for me. Right? They allow me to live a life of freedom. So I wrote this book behind me called Fire Yourself, which is how you replace your working income in passive income with passive income in 3 years or less.
Well, and I believe the name of your podcast is Mailbox Money, which I love. I love that name.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. I think there's a lot of myths, Gene, about people saying, "Hey, I'm gonna do online trading with stocks, or I'm gonna buy a rental house and I'm gonna have passive income, or I'm gonna do something that." It requires my time or start an online business. And it's these things are not passive. Right? You think that they're passive, but they actually create work. And so I think, there's nothing that's fully passive. I think, there's this myth that things are like you just don't do anything, but there is work as a passive investor where you can vet a team, you vet an operator, you vet somebody who else is going to do the work, and then you put your money in. And then at some point it does become mailbox money, or now it's direct deposit money, but that's not as much of a ring as mailbox money, right? So, but the idea that checks or deposits just come every month or every quarter without you doing anything, right? And that's where the money is really working for you. And so again, it's not fully passive, but it's much more passive and it's much more scalable. The test I have, it's called the scalability test. And a lot of people think I should do real estate because that's what's going to lead me to financial freedom, because we know that in our minds, right? But so we buy a house because we lived in a house, or we buy a rental house and we buy another one. And then we realize like, oh my gosh, I've got 3 or 4 of these and it's a lot of work. And I just can't. And the scalability test is if you can't 10x the size of what you're doing. So if you couldn't go from 3 houses to 30 houses very quickly, then you're not really passive investing, right? You're really just making yourself another job.
Okay. Well, I think you kind of specialize, and correct me if I'm wrong, in multifamily. At least now that's where you focus is.
We've done a lot in multifamily. We've had about 2,500 units. We have about 250 million in multifamily. I love multifamily investing. There's a lot of benefits to it. There's tax benefits. There's all kinds of benefits. And one challenge with multifamily right now is cash flow. It's a little harder to find cash flowing deals right now, but people always need a place to live. There's no technology that's on the horizon where they're not going to need a roof over their head or a bed to sleep in. So we think it's a great, it's a great play for sure.
So do you feel that is, how can I say, I don't want to say easier, but less time consuming than having several rent houses?
I do. I mean, I really think that, buying a single family house, or let's just say you're buying a duplex or 3 or 4 unit place versus buying 100 unit, I would argue that 100 units is almost easier, because you have much more efficient processes. You have a much bigger team in place. You have typically on-site help with, everything. So let's say you have 100 units. Well, instead of having, if you had 100 houses, right? Or if you had 10 houses, you'd
Right.
have to have somebody drive around and they've got to go to your place. You get paid for the time, $50 an hour, whatever the amount is, to go there, go to Home Depot, go get the part, then come back to your place. Versus an apartment building, it's like you get a discount on labor because one person works for you. So instead of paying $50 an hour, maybe you're paying $20 an hour, or whatever. And then they're with you all the time. It's typically the same types of appliances, the same paint colors.
Yeah.
It's one roof, it's one set of plumbing. So it's like it's all there. So it's much, much more efficient. You also have help with the leasing. You have so it's just a much more efficient way to do it. And so the numbers sometimes as an investor, it can look up attractive when you look at some of these single family deals. I started actually working in the Cleveland market, and all these numbers are
Oh,
amazing. And I thought this is great. And then I realized, like, man, it just doesn't quite work out the way they want. The tenants were always tougher on it than I thought. Maybe they stopped making payments.
yeah.
Cities were difficult, and just kind of some of the ways they would manage things. And so I do think it is much more efficient when you go to larger projects. And again, it allows you to be more passive, right? Because then when we have, if we're raising $20 million or $10 million for a larger project, then there's a team in place to do that work, right? Versus you have all these individual houses and you've got to try to figure one off, and it's not efficient from a management standpoint.
Now, there are a lot of people listening, so those that have not started investment or an equity program, and those that have rent houses, how did you make the leap from having a rent house or to multifamily? I mean, it's a different animal. It's not quite the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not like anti single family. I think it's great for some people. It really helps. It's a long-term strategy of creating wealth. But the people that I know that have done well, it typically takes about 15 to 20 years to really generate enough, unless you're in like a really good cycle and all of a sudden you get a big increase in value in a short amount of time. But I realized for me, my goal, it depends really what someone's goal is. For me, my goal was to, as my book says, to fire myself, right? I wanted to get into it where I could have enough cash flow coming in to be able to replace my working income, or at least be able to live, right? I knew I needed about,
Mhm.
at the time, $6,000 or $7,000 a month. It wasn't a lot, but I needed some money to be able to survive. And I realized with these rental houses, it's hard to find things these days that really cash flow, right? And if you had a really good one, maybe you get, one, two, three, four, 500 a month. But then again, if you had one repair, if you had one bad tenant, you had one thing that happened, it would just cut into all that cash flow,
Right.
right? We know that, right? That's
Right.
that's stuff that happens.
It's gone.
Yeah, and we all have a story. Anybody's had a rental house for more than a few years, you've had that story, right? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is gonna be, so it grows equity over a long period of time. It is a wealth building strategy, but it's not what really allows you to have flexibility. Hey, do I want to make work optional? That if I wanted to leave this job, and maybe it's not even a choice of like, hey, I want to, but let's say, God forbid, I became disabled, or a spouse became disabled, or you had a child to take care of. Would you be able to have enough money coming in? And so those are questions I think that are really important. So I realized that it wasn't really getting me the cash flow that I wanted. And so I started to learn about multifamily, that it does cash flow better. And that, for me, I didn't have a lot of money to invest. And that's some people say, well, I don't have enough money to buy an apartment building. Well, again, we're thinking in terms of what we knew before, but you can actually, leverage other people's money. So I learned about raising capital. That was something that I did, which sounds crazy, but, $45 million later, it's like it's actually worked. And it's been something that, wow, that's kind of amazing. But when we pull together with other people, with our own funds, or we pull together with just bringing people together, it allows us to really do something much bigger that allows for much higher cash flow for everybody.
Now, didn't you form an investment group, I believe, in Pasadena, was it?
Yeah, so I ran a real estate meetup that was more just networking and education in Pasadena area in California for about 5 years. And I just had we'd have monthly meetups. Typically, 40 to 80 people would show up, and it was just a lot of fun and just create a lot of collaborative conversations, bring an expert in. It was great. And I think that for anyone, if you're in Houston, you're in a mid-sized, large metro, there are meetups where people talk about real estate, and I think it's really important that anybody who's interested in this topic goes and meets in person, because you just meet interesting people that are doing it, right? And that you'll learn a lot while
Right.
you get around other people doing. I'm sure you do. I don't know if you do a fair amount of networking as well, but there's a lot of great ones in
Right.
Houston. I've spoken at a couple of them actually. Yeah.
Great.
Would you like to learn how to navigate the world of real estate with confidence? Then add The Real in Real Estate with host Gene Mitchell to your podcast playlist. The Real in Real Estate is your go-to source for everything real estate related. Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or renovating, The Real in Real Estate brings you expert advice as well as insider tips to help you make smart moves. With industry-leading expert guests and discussions on the latest property trends, you'll get the knowledge you need to stay ahead of the game. On The Real in Real Estate, you'll learn about topics that matter most, like flood insurance, maximizing your investment, and even how the power of organization can transform your space. Host Gene Mitchell is a real estate expert and author of Top Producer Steps to Success in Real Estate, featuring insights from 20 top producers, including inspiring stories like Tim Surratt's Journey to Success. Whether you're an agent, a buyer, or a seller, The Real in Real Estate with Gene Mitchell delivers the tools and strategies you need to be a success. Add The Real in Real Estate to your podcast playlist on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Ready to get real about real estate? Then tune in right now.
Well, tell us I had you on here to help people and give them direction. So tell me a little bit more about what you can do for our listeners.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing, Gene, really is trying to figure out what your goals are. A lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, I should do real estate." And for me, I didn't realize this. I mean, now I've had over 2,500 one-on-one phone calls with high net worth investors worth over 2 million on average. And I'm writing my second book called Rich Brain: How the Wealthy Change Their Brain to Change Their Bank Account. Right. So, what are the mindsets or things around wealth that people do that actually get them from going from one thing to another? And there's this belief that people are in our culture. There's this common belief that says that you either came from money or you didn't, right? You either have the silver spoon in your mouth, or I didn't come from money, I didn't come from the trust fund, whatever. But actually, the facts are completely opposite. It's actually Fidelity Investments found that 86%, this was in a study in 2019, 86% of millionaires are self-made, right? So there's
that's a huge number.
Which is crazy. Yeah, it's almost 9 out of 10 actually learned the learnable things of gaining and growing wealth. So by being on a show like this and people listening, they're actually, you're bettering yourself, you're investing in yourself. Warren Buffett says the best education or the best investment is in yourself. So I think that for everyone, it's really the process of learning and figuring out what you want. Like, if you don't know what you want, if you don't know where you want to go, you're just going to kind of keep going from one thing. Everything's going to be a shiny object syndrome. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try wholesaling. I'm going to try flipping. I'm going to try buying a house. I'm going to try raising money. But once you figure out what you want, and I'm a big fan of cash flow because I think it's what really allows you to fire yourself and be able to leave a job and be able to support yourself. And it doesn't mean you have to replace your income. It can just be your living expenses. But I think getting really clear on what you want, and for many people, probably many of your listeners as well, you're making a lot of money, but you're giving a lot of back in taxes. And we've had people that are paying 40, 50, 60% in taxes that I know, but there are ways you can reduce that through investing in certain types of investments, such as real estate, becoming a real estate professional. There's oil and gas that offers ordinary tax reduction, which is kind of interesting. And so educating yourself in that is important. But, we don't know.
And being in Houston, it would be even more important.
Exactly. Yeah. Houston's like the capital of all the energy stuff. So I think it's really, again, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that, when something sounds a little bit like almost too good to be true, it's important to kind of like really try to dive in and learn more about it, because I worked with physicians for years that were paying incredible amounts of taxes. And then I remember other ones that, like, I know two guys in the medical field in California that sold a practice that had a $5 million practice they sold, and the tax bill was over $2 million, but they only ended up paying $125,000 because through tax strategy and doing certain things. So there are tax strategists that help with this, right? So I think whatever you're doing, the way to earn more is really to learn more, is to educate yourself and to learn as much as you can.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the reasons I do this podcast, because I'm a big believer in education and learning. And I think we can help ourselves as well as our clients or our partners in business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing. I do think, like, the mindset piece I was kind of getting into, that there is something I'd love to share called wealth worthiness that kind of came
Please
up
do.
in my research is, again, a lot of people think that you either have money or you don't. But again, if this is actually a learnable thing, and there's something about me that's actually either bringing in money or it's actually causing me to not be around money, there's this idea of wealth worthiness that came up. And really what it is A lot of people build this kind of gradually over time. It's basically, what do I feel like I'm worthy of? Somebody who makes $100,000 a year kind of always finds a way to make about $100,000 a year, right? If somebody's making $1 million a year, they just kind of find a way through difference. They just, oh, this kind of feel like what I feel like I
That's
deserve.
true.
But it's kind of true, and you see it. It's like a thermometer, right? We're kind of there, and so the way to change that, and we'll see this: people get stuck in jobs and careers or whatever. Is some people have kind of a steady increase over time, or they'll be like, "Oh, I'm doing this," and it'll kind of grow over time. That I feel worthy of this over time. And other people, it's like a huge jump in a short period of time. So for me, I had a 20x net worth to a 7-figure net worth in less than 4 years, and it happened
Wow.
because a lot of mindset things just around feeling worthy of. Like, I'm worthy of this type of wealth. Now, this translates in relationships. We see this in relationships as well. So my self-talk, we all have a self-talk that happens, right?
Yes, we
So,
do.
so if I'm a young guy and I show up at a party, I see a beautiful woman across the room and I want to go talk to her, right? Because she's a beautiful woman. I want to go say, but yet my self-talk is like, oh, she's never going to like me. I'm no good. I'm ugly and whatever. Well, how's that conversation going to go? It's probably not going to go very well, right?
No,
It,
it's not.
it's not. Versus if I'm like, oh, I'm awesome. I have something to offer. This is great. Maybe there'll be something, a future, like something. It's the same thing with wealth. We actually can self-sabotage when it comes to investing, when it comes to how we ask for a raise, when we're doing things with work. And so this idea of wealth worthiness, it feels a little bit intangible, but it's very, very clear that as people's wealth worthiness grows, it may not translate immediately, and all of a sudden this wealth is here, but it can happen. I'll give you an example of this. I've been looking at my life recently. There's a book called 10x is easier than 2x. So it gives you this, how do you translate your life? I can kind of explain that in a minute, but if I'm looking at going 10x in my life, like, what does that look like for me to do that? What kind of person would I need to become, right? Well, if I'm going to
Right.
10x income, if I'm going to 10x my sales, my relationships, or anything in my life, I have to become a different person to do that, right? I've got to let go of a lot of things that I was doing to become this new person. So because I kind of created that as a possibility for myself, and I started to spend time thinking about who that person is, and that person's a powerful person, and they step into things in a different way, and they're able to kind of interact in a different way and be able to. So this opportunity came around that I would have passed on, but it basically is an opportunity for basically us to about 5x our business almost overnight. And we're
Wow.
talking tens of thousands of dollars a month, right? Now, I would have totally missed it, but yet I'd already been thinking and kind of creating this ahead. And I've been creating that I am this type of person so that when it came around, it was like something happened and I'm like, okay, this is for me. Right. So it sounds subtle,
Perfect.
but every wealthy, not every wealthy person, most wealthy people that I know that are worth over $10 million have some sort of mindset practice, have some sort of thing around how they talk to themselves, their goals, their intentions. They have written goals. Most people don't. Most people think it's kind of weird. But when these highly successful people have this stuff, I think it's important to pay attention.
Absolutely. It sounds like this is a premise for your book that's coming up.
Yeah. This is this is the central theme of my book. Yeah, it's about wealth worthiness. Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
that's definitely something I want to read, and I think most people out there should read because I agree with you 100% about mindset. If you think you can do it, you can. If you think you can't do it, you can't.
Yeah. Tony Robbins says about 80% of success in life is getting the right psychology, right? Just simply believing the right things. Now, some of it's actually implementing, but I've been amazed that as I have a breakthrough in my mindset or my personal life or some other area, it's like I have this huge business breakthrough. And so that's the kind of stuff that I think people don't always make a connection, especially if you're a passive investor and you're maybe, later, let's say you're in your 50s or 60s, it's like, you're not really thinking, oh, I'm going to have this big transformation, whatever. But like, it's really in our mind that we experience life differently. And that's how we create this brighter future for ourselves. And it's easy that if life has been the same for the last 20 years and you're doing a job or family's this, and it's like,
Comfortable.
it's comfortable. It's just is what it is. But life is not just static. It's either you're moving forward or you're moving back. You're either growing or you're kind of decaying. And so it's just one of those things that I think no matter what our age is, we just have to move forward toward growth. And as we do that, we're going to see breakthroughs in different areas. And this is how people you see that they create even later in life. Like Colonel Sanders, I think, was like 65 years old and he sold his chicken recipe after 1,000 tries. Where like you just
Yeah.
continue to try and be out there. So I'm one that I just want to continue to be introduce myself to new things, new ideas, and just continue to create a brighter future for myself.
And along that line, I think people that are afraid to take that step is, with the mindset, oh, there's no way I could do that. You just got to take one step. And once you take that first step, I think it's easier to get to step two, but you really have to push yourself for step one. And I think a book like yours sounds fabulous. We all need to hear that repeatedly.
Yeah, we do. We do. Yeah, because I think in life, I don't know, I think they say that the brain is like 80% negative or so. There's like this negative bias
Oh, that high. Wow.
because it's a survival thing, right? It's like we go into a room, and this is why in the world, people are, gossiping about each other or saying this, or it's just but it's a survival thing, right? When we were, back in caves or whatever, whatever you believe, like there was this sense of we had to really fight for survival, or maybe there was a lion around the corner, so there really was a
Mhm.
fight or flight. Like, are you going to fight the lion, or are you going to run? And so we still feel like that when we go in a room and we don't know anybody, and we fill out a place, or somebody says something to us and it feels uncomfortable. But like these are things that as we lean into the things that feel a little bit uncomfortable, that's where all the growth happens. And that's where I really
Absolutely.
recommend for anybody that, we're talking a lot about personal growth here, but one of my favorite books, and I read a lot, is Brené Brown's book called The Gifts of Imperfection. So Brené Brown
Oh,
is an author. She had a TED Talk, talks about shame and vulnerability, and just the importance of leaning into the discomfort, right? The growth happens when we lean into uncomfortability, right? So like if I want to get stronger in a fitness standpoint, I got to lean into something that feels like it doesn't feel comfortable going to the gym and lifting weights or going to the class or going on the run, but though that's what's going to actually make me stronger. And so it's the things in life that feel like a little bit out of our comfort zone, but then our comfort zone starts to improve over time, starts to increase over time.
absolutely. If I can tell a story on myself real quick. When I first started in this business, I'm basically an introvert. It is I have the wrong mindset, so I'm going to get your book when it comes out. But it's something I work on every single day. But when I first started, someone told me, it's someone actually is in my book that I wrote, said, find something you can do every single day, if it's going to breakfast, going to coffee, or whatever. So it worked out in my life at the time. I would go to Starbucks every morning, but I didn't want to talk to anyone because I was afraid to talk to everyone. So I just kept going, and eventually I would look up and I would say hello, and they would sit, and it eventually bloomed into I get lots of business from Starbucks now. But it
Wow.
took me doing what was uncomfortable and pushing myself to talk to people to make that happen. Now it comes much more easily. I'm not an expert at it, but it's taking that first step, and it's hard. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
very hard.
Yeah, it is. And anything is, I've had a friend who says this. He's like, you have your comfort zone, and then you've got on the outer circles, of inner circles, your comfort zone, then you've got your panic zone, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm having a panic attack. Then there's kind of in between, which is the growth zone, right? And then over time your comfort zone increases. And I think it's good just to continue to try new things. And just the research shows it. I mean, it's great for the brain to get into new social
Yes.
situations. To learn a new language. I went to country of Colombia, about a month and a half ago. I'm on my 40th day of doing the Duolingo app where I'm learning Spanish every day, right? So
And how did that go?
taking dance lessons or doing some other, like all this stuff is great for us. The movement, the learning, the information, the reading. I think we're late March. I've read 27 books this year so far, right?
Oh
So it's
my
just
gosh.
continuing to try to learn and having goals around learning and growth, because there's a direct translation to how that's going to impact your life.
That's amazing. Well, as you know, I try to keep this to a 30-minute podcast. So, tell us what you want us to know that we haven't talked about so far.
Yeah, well, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I think, the
Yes.
stuff to me, I think life happens on the deeper stuff. So I think if you want to see the biggest shift in your life, changing some of your mindset stuff is huge. I do think, the first step when it comes to investing, I know this is a real estate show. The first thing when it comes to investing is just, there's really two things that I think really are like the rocket fuel that become,
Right.
you really get people. And that's just how I 20x my net worth. The first one, I mean, they don't sound that magical, but they are. They really are rocket fuel. So if you think of them as rocket fuel, the first one is networking, which is kind of what you were doing at Starbucks, right? And you're able to bring
Yes.
business in, whatever. Or you get in a room where you don't know anybody, but it's a common interest, like a real estate meetup. And I've found business partners. I mean, I could tell you a story. I met a guy at a networking event. We partnered together in business and made over $1 million together, right? It was just like
Wow.
amazing, right? That stuff happens. And so that's
Yeah.
networking. And so there's a saying, you're the average of the five people that you spend the most time with, right? And so if I want to change
Oh,
any area, this is a quote by it's attributed to different people. John Wooden is one that said it, but you're the average of the five people you spend the time with. So if I look around, I'm like, I want to be wealthier. Then I've got around people that are wealthier than I am. I've got people that are 5 or 10x where
right.
I'm at as far as wealth. If I want to get better at my spirituality or better at my, more focused on my health, I've got around people that are having those habits, and it will just automatically bring me up just being around them, right? So that's a huge one. The
Absolutely.
networking. Yeah, so that's one. And then the other one is really the education piece, right? So we kind of talked about that with books and things, but it can be books, be great podcasts like this. It can be just learning, taking courses, and just being willing to try, because those two things, like meeting the right people as well as providing value to them, and then also just continuing to learn, is that those are going to provide incredible shifts in your life as an investor. Because again, you'll find out about deals you never would have heard about. You'll hear about things that you wouldn't have heard about. You'll be comfortable with things. You're like, oh, I would have just been doing stocks had I not known about this, or would have just had a financial advisor versus like maybe I can kind of do some of this myself and I can get involved. So I think there's lots of ways to grow, but I think those are kind of the two things that I think people do to really get to the next level fairly quickly in finances.
Well, I'm a big proponent of education. I always have been, and I agree with you 100% on that. So, well, I see your book, Fire Yourself. So that's definitely something we all need to get. And what's going to be the name of one that's coming out?
Yeah, it's called Rich Brain: How the Wealthy Change Their Brain to Change Their Bank Account.
And when do you think that'll be out?
I'm hoping this year. So I basically wrote the whole book. I wrote the whole book, and then I realized I was trying to do a little too much in the book. So I've got to kind of shorten it up, make it a little more focused, really on that. And you're an author as well, so you know that process of writing. It's a labor of love. So it's a lot.
It is. It is. It's another child.
Yeah, it is.
How can people contact you if they have questions or want to get involved?
Yeah, thanks, Gene. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, so I have a free gift for your audience. We have a guide about inflation, actually. So as an investor, we're talking, we say inflation is only 3%, but I tend to believe it's higher than that. Just if you look at food costs are about 50% higher than they were just 4 or 5 years ago. And so instead of being pained by inflation every time you go to the store or at the pump, there's a way you can actually use it to your advantage. So whether it's as a real estate investor or using debt, you can do it in things like other sorts of assets that cash flow. Even there's some unique strategies using precious metals. And so I have it, it's all in here. It's called How to Use Inflation to Your Advantage. It's like a guide.
I love it.
And so if your audience texts the word inflation to the number 33777, so if you text the word inflation to the number 33777, we'll just send it. It'll ask for email. We'll just send it to you for free, and then it'll let you know about our future upcoming stuff that's happening as far as our offerings and things like that. But it'd be great to connect with your audience. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, everybody likes a deal and a gift. So 33777 and the word inflation, right?
Correct. That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Bronson. And your website is bronsonequity.com. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thanks, Gene. Yeah.
Okay, so check it out. And I really appreciate, you're a very busy person, very successful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us.
Hey, it's so fun being here. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Really appreciate what you're doing here, Gene.
Well, maybe we can get more in depth when that new book comes out.
That sounds great. I'd love it.
Thanks, Bronson. Thank you for tuning in to the Real and Real Estate Podcast. I hope today's insights have inspired and empowered you. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share the podcast with anyone who might benefit. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to explore? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep moving towards success.